I kind of leaned into certifications to progress my career. And I will be honest with you, Dakota, another reason for that is I kind of treated certifications as really an insurance policy. I did desktop support, and then I got into junior network admin and worked my way to network architect.
When I kind of started out in the tech field, and I still kind of do this, I have my end goal. I've heard of people like putting a poster up on the wall of like, you know, that Hawaiian vacation or something that like visually reminds you always.
Dakota, thanks for having me on. I am Tim Bertino. I've been in the IT profession for going on 14 years now. Started off in the help desk desktop support kind of realm. Always wanted to get into networking. Was finally given that chance about 10 years ago, and never really looked back. Kept trying to find the next things that excite me. And about 5-6 months ago, I actually finally got the opportunity to join Cisco. So now I'm a pre-sale solutions engineer with Cisco.
That's so cool. I remember when I first learned networking, my high school offered like Cisco CCNA, and that was back in the ICND 1 and 2 days and Neticat and all that. And I remember that like Cisco was like up there in like this golden like standard, and like it was just so cool working with them. And I've got a lot of cool interactions. Like I've got to go to like the Cisco Meraki headquarters and do training there with them and stuff. So
oh wow,
that's really cool. But yeah, let's talk about like how you got your start. Like let's dive into that. Like how you got your start in the networking field. Really, what drove you to decide to get into networking?
Well, you already said the word that really sparked the passion for me, and that's Neticat. So yeah. I really wish I would have had something like that in high school, but I didn't. In high school, we had AutoCAD. I thought I was going to be a building architect. I started doing that, I think, my sophomore year. And sometimes I'm kind of a slow learner. I hit my senior year, and I finally kind of sat back in my chair in that class and went, you know what? I am not any good at this. I would have been like a complete liability as a building architect, but I really enjoyed working with computers. So I wanted to find some way that I could continue to learn down that path, but I really didn't know anything. So I started looking at schools and then majors, and I saw, okay, the school I went to, there was 2 tracks. I could go the computer information systems track, which if I did that, I had to choose a concentration, and there was web design, database, networking. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really know what any of those were. And then the other option was computer science. Granted, I didn't know what that was either, but it had computer in the name. I didn't have to pick a concentration. So I was like, excellent, let's do that. And then I get there, and it is the immediate smack in the face of calculus and C++. And I'll tell you, Dakota, I was sweating early on because I jumped into those right away. And I'm like, you know what? I think I made a mistake. I don't think this is the right thing for me. But as an elective, my freshman year, I took an intro to networking class, and it just so happened to be from the Cisco Networking Academy. And almost immediately, a lot of those concepts just clicked. You learned early on the layers of the OSI model, and it gave you, I'm somebody who needs structure in my life. And
I can relate to that.
Yeah. And, concepts like the OSI model, it gives you that structure, that generalized troubleshooting path. And I really liked that structure. So pretty much from my freshman year, when I latched onto that networking course from Neticat, I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do, and started striving toward that. In college, I had the opportunity to get to work for the help desk and desktop support at the school I went to. And that was, I'll tell you, school itself was great. I learned a lot of great things, but it wouldn't have been anything without that hands-on, on-the-job experience. And that's really what got me my first role out of college, in my opinion. I mean, I would have really liked to have been networking, but I just didn't have the experience. And I had that desktop support experience. But one thing that I will say is I recommend that nobody really shies away from roles like help desk and desktop support, because really twofold. It gets you to learn really good skill sets that allow you to kind of figure out where you want to pivot to next. And it also is a great way for you to learn the business, learn the organization that you work at. So before Cisco, I spent just over 13 years at my previous employer. And when I took that desktop support role, I was in all the buildings and I was learning how things were done and where things were at. So by the time I took that networking role, I already knew where a lot of the data closets were and data center and all that good stuff. So definitely recommend, there's nothing wrong at all with a quote entry level role.
No, and that's so true. When we first started talking, I mentioned that, like in high school, I took the CCNA, which was great. That's where I think I developed my love for networking. And then I got to college, and just college wasn't for me. Like I have no problem admitting I was a college dropout. I just didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at that time. And I didn't go into a career in IT, in general. I did not do IT. I ended up landing a job in manufacturing. I got married, had kids, did what I need to do to put a roof over our heads. And which was great. Like before I got into tech, I was a bulldozer operator. I was making like $70,000 a year. And most people are like, well, that's pretty good, but I was just so like bored out of my mind at the job. I hated it. It wasn't challenging me mentally. So when I decided to get into tech, I knew like I had no experience. I didn't want to go back to school. I didn't have the money or time. So I knew I was going to have to start at the basics. And so I knew I was going to have to start at the help desk, but I knew I wanted to work my way up to become an engineer. So my plan was, when I got into the IT field, was I'm going to take a help desk job for 1 to 2 years. I'm going to take a pay cut. I ended up taking like a $20,000 a year pay cut to do this, but I did the help desk for 2 years, and then I was going to go on to my next job. And I got into my job, and I actually quickly made back, within that first 2 years at that position, made back nearly my salary, which was awesome. And that 2-year mark rolled around, and this was at the time of like the pandemic and stuff. So we had to move away from where that job was located. They wouldn't let me work remote. And just so happened, I landed a job as a network engineer for a school district, which was great. Like, I'm like, oh, this is going to be so good for my resume. I'm finally doing what I'm wanting to do. I got into the job and I was power washing Chromebooks, not touching any piece of network equipment. Didn't
just
even
goes
have
to
rights.
show,
yeah,
just goes to show job titles don't always mean everything.
Exactly. But what I'm getting at with this is like that help desk set me up for success, because that network engineering job, of course, I didn't last there. I just couldn't do it. But then I landed a job as a knock technician at a small local ISP. And from there, I've really accelerated my career. I'm now the director of NetOps. But what I'm getting at is just to emphasize your point of starting at the help desk is a great way to kind of figure out what you want to do in the field and build that initial experience, because experience is super important.
I agree. Experience is huge. And you brought up something a minute ago that I want to touch on. We were actually talking about it tonight at the dinner table, in that, especially, I think it's still true in IT professions today, is that college is not the only path. It's a viable path. It's fine if you're in the right place and learning and able to get hands-on. Absolutely. But it's not the only path.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad that you shared your story and how you were able to get it, and because there's so many different ways to do it.
No, and it's definitely not for everyone. My generation, like I was forced into college. Like, if you're going to college, or you're going to amount to nothing and you're going to live on the streets. And,
yeah, there was never any middle ground.
There was never any middle ground. And, sure enough, college wasn't for me. And I learned the hard way. I went to the school of hard knocks type of thing. And, but going back, I wouldn't have changed a thing. And knowing what I know now as like a hiring manager in my job role, I don't look at people any differently, whether they have a degree or not. And because I went through there, I realized some of the smartest individuals and the hardest working individuals are ones that didn't go the traditional college route. So don't let that hold you back, or don't think that you have to get a college degree to get started in the field. And that leads me to the next thing I want to talk about. So for me, my route into the tech field was, an entry level job with certifications. Like, I didn't have certifications when I started out, but while I was in that entry level job, any free time I had, I was working on certifications and trying to get myself set up for that next job. And I want to talk about what you think the importance certifications play in a career progression, becoming a networking engineer.
That's a fantastic question. And it's definitely out there in terms of paths into and through IT careers. Like you said, there's education, there's hands-on learning, and certifications is definitely a piece of that. I will say that for a portion of my career, I definitely had an on again, off again relationship with certifications. I mentioned being somebody who takes a bit of time to learn and really grasp things. And I had some stumbles. I had some failures on certification exams. And what stung is that I felt like I spent so much time. And I'm like, with the time I put into this, there's no reason I shouldn't have passed that. And that, to me, that's the wrong way to look at it. You can spend a ton of time, but it's how you're spending that time. And that really hit home for me when I started going after the Cisco Certified Network Professional. So in 2020, I made a goal and I said, I'm going to get the CCNP. I didn't put a time limit on it. I just said, I'm going to get it. And I will tell you, I got, the Cisco Press book. I did subscriptions to different video providers. I'm like, I have all the tools that I need. And I spent the entire year of 2020 going through those materials, doing labs, all that stuff. And one of the things I found was that, okay, this is great, but let's say I pick a topic one month and I say, okay, this week I'm going to learn spanning tree. I go through all the material and I feel pretty good about it. And then I move on to the next thing. And all of a sudden a month has passed. I just keep going after one topic after the other. And it's been a month since I've touched spanning tree. And so it's like, I don't know about you, but I don't retain stuff if I'm not going after it a bunch. And that's when I found the concept of space repetition and digital flashcards. And I really started incorporating that into my daily routine with studying. And I'll tell you, I really don't think I would have passed the two exams that it took to get the CCNP without that. So that's kind of my study story. The next thing, just certifications in general. I think that they're a great way to get you into and progress through a career. I still, to this day, think that the networking certifications were a big part of me getting into networking. So when I was in that desktop role, I had a director that was really fantastic, and he would meet individually with folks that reported up through him. And he asked me one day, he said, so what's your long-term goal? What do you want to do here? And I said, well, I want to get into networking. And his first question to me was, well, what are you doing about that to position yourself to get yourself a networking role? And I said, well, I'm going after you mentioned at the time it was ICND 1, ICND 2. I was going after the CCENT on the way to get the CCNA. And he said, okay, well, come to me when you get that done. So I did. And that was kind of another driver. So I used, certification as fuel to say, hey, they're kind of putting this as a goal for me on the path to getting this network role. So I got it. I went to them and said, hey, I went and got this. I'm still interested. And they ended up creating a role for that. And
that's cool.
Really just following the bouncing ball, I kind of leaned into certifications to progress my career. And I will be honest with you, Dakota, another reason for that is I kind of treated certifications and have up to this point in my career as really an insurance policy. I figured that it was a way I could leverage that. Let's say, I'm with you. I'm a family guy. I've got wife and kids, kind of need to have income coming in.
Yep.
It's kind of important. So I wanted to find any way I could to position myself that, hey, if I lost my job tomorrow, I need to be able to find that next role as soon as possible. And that's another reason I've leaned into certifications, is that quote insurance policy. But the last thing I'll say is that I think certifications are a great way to give you a guided learning path. If you have something in mind that says, hey, I really want to learn, enterprise networking, then those Cisco certifications can give you that blueprint to walk you through it. But what I'll say about certifications is that I really do think that you need to have a good why. If you want it to be beneficial, I think you need to have a good why of, I'm doing this certification because I want to land this next role, or I want to learn this specific thing. Certifications just for certification's sake, I'm not sure how valuable that is. I'd like to get, what's your take on that?
No, and I was just about to ask you that question as well. I do career coaching. I try to, help people get into the tech field, and I get so many people coming to me, and the most common thing is, I'm going to go get the CompTIA trifecta. If you don't know what that is, that's the CompTIA A+, Net Plus, and Security Plus. And I'm going to go get those certifications, and then I'm going to get a job. And I'm like, okay, great. Why do you need all three of those certifications? What job is that going to set you up for? And a lot of times they're like, well, I don't know. This guru on the internet told me I need to go get these 3 certifications. And I'm like, that's the wrong reason to go get those certifications. And I want to touch on really quick that you don't need certifications to land that first job in the field, or really any job in the field. I mentioned that I had no prior work experience as a college dropout. When I landed my first job, I was studying for my A+ certification. I didn't even have it in hand yet. But they saw that I was studying for it, and they're like, that's enough. If you want to continue studying for it, great. But, the knowledge you have is enough to land you the job. But yeah, going back to your question is no, I think just getting certifications for the sake of getting certifications is a waste of money, in all honesty. It's dumb. And I know there's tons of people out there that you go look at their LinkedIn profile and they have alphabet soup after their name. It's like CCNA, CCNP, CCIE, OSCP, and it's like, what job is that really going to help you out with? And I'm going to throw this back to you. Do you think there's such a thing of having too many certifications? Do you think that's a red flag for employers?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I will never deter anybody from learning, but I go back to, I think if you have a well-defined why of why you've gone through that stuff. So you mentioned the CompTIA entry certifications earlier. When I was in that desktop role earlier on in my career, I went and did the A+ in Network Plus, and I did the A+ right before, because it used to be a permanent certification.
Yeah.
And I did it right before they flipped it to where you had to renew it every X amount of years. I'm not even sure what it is anymore, but I will tell you,
3 years currently.
Is it 3? Okay.
It's 3.
So I will tell you now, when I'm talking to people or resume or that kind of stuff, technically it's still valid. Do I tell people that I'm A+ certified anymore? Absolutely not, because I just have not done that stuff for 10 plus years.
Yeah. And, maybe I should rephrase that question. Do you think there's such a thing of having too many certifications without the experience to back that up? Like someone who's just starting out and has all these advanced certifications.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That it is, I think it does look interesting, because there are so many, I'll say so many. There are a fair amount of job openings right now. You put a job out there, a company does, and you're going to have a lot, most likely a lot of applicants. And when an certification department or an IT department is starting to filter through those, if you see somebody with not a whole lot of experience, but a whole slew of certifications, you're probably going to have questions. And that's where, with anything, you need that balance, the good balance of experience, education, certifications to an extent. But you touched on something earlier that I wanted to get into, in that, and I've actually been a part of this in the hiring process, where you've got people coming in, applying for roles, and you may have somebody that comes in that doesn't have a lot of experience, but very similar to the story that you told, that you said, hey, I'm working toward this certification. This is why I'm doing it. I'm doing this in my own time. I think if you've got somebody who's driven, they know they've got direction, they know what they're doing, and they're probably most importantly, a very cool, very nice person.
Yes.
I think in today's day and age, and maybe this has been that way for quite a while in technology, I think that will get you very far. Me, as somebody who would have been hiring people, I think there are certain roles, especially entry level, where who the person is and what they stand for, what they're willing to do when they get in the door, probably means more than what's their technical ability day one.
Absolutely.
Basically, are they coachable?
That's one thing that so many people don't realize. I'm going to draw on my experience with that is, the current job I'm in, when I applied for it, I went to the interview and I'm like thinking, this is like an epic job. This is like my dream job. I so want this, but there's no way they're going to hire me. I went to the first interview. I'm like, felt like pretty confident and went great. And then I'm like, okay, they're never going to call, whatever. A couple of weeks later, I get brought back for an interview, a second interview. So I go through it, feel like I nailed it. But again, I'm like 3 years barely in the field, 2 years, don't really have a lot of, experience in the networking role, but, so I figured they're not going to call me. Well, I end up getting offered the job, and my first day I go in and I sit, the director of operations at the time sits me down and is like, I want to tell you that I hired you. You weren't, the reason I hired you is because your personality felt like a good fit. I will tell you that you were not the most qualified candidate. There was people with degrees that were actually quite pissed off that they didn't get offered their jobs. They're like, how could someone be more qualified than me? And I hired you because I saw that ambition and I saw that motivation, and I saw that your personality was the right personality for our team. And, soft skills are just such an underrated skill, I think, in the tech field. A lot of people sometimes will enter the tech field because they hear like, oh, you don't have to deal with people. And that's just not the case. Gone are the days of your basement IT department that, is never heard from.
Hello, IT. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
IT in general is a customer service role. So I think that's a really important point that you bring up there.
It absolutely is. And I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned your role now is is it director of network operations?
Yep.
So I see that title, I hear that title, and I immediately think leadership. So what my question to you is, what are your thoughts around people that have been technical individual contributors for a while in their career? Now that a while is relative, right? But have been technical individual contributors for a while and decide, hey, I want to look into leadership, or I want to take a leadership role. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you think are some of the obstacles for technical practitioners trying to get into leadership?
To me, it comes down to personality. Typically, technical practitioners and leadership a lot of times can have different traits. You know what I mean? They have different personalities, and it can be difficult to make that transition. For me, it felt natural because, and I think that my YouTube channel actually helped because I'm on here constantly talking to people. I have that kind of personality where I try to be open and just genuine person. there is definitely a path of progression. And I know just from experience talking to other technical professionals out there that it's not always the desired path. A lot of times I feel that technical people get pushed into these roles. Like there's no more further, they've hit that, that ceiling at their job, and there's no other further progression as a technical person. So they are forced into a leadership role. And it really just comes down to what you want. I think in the long run, you have to be okay with your decision. And I work for a small organization. So even though I'm in the leadership, more administrative role, I'm still in there cabling the knock. I'm still in there doing things. I mean, I tell the story, there's this one instance that was like in the middle of this big rainstorm, and we had built this city Wi-Fi deployment out throughout the city. And we found out that there's these like hardened switches that we had deployed out in the field, but the enclosures they were in were leaking. And so they were failing left and right. And there's thousands of dollars equipment, get us failing. And our we have some guys that are, trained to use, like the bucket truck you see up on the telephone poles. They were out that day. It was, again, COVID times. And I'm like, okay, well, time to put on my fall harness. I've been in a bucket truck. I've been, around heavy equipment. And so I just went out in the field and started doing the work. And so, but not all organizations are like that. I'm sorry to go off on a rant here, but the point I'm getting at is you kind of have to judge that is, do you work in an organization that's going to silo you off purely to that leadership role? And are you okay with that? Or do you work for an organization where like you have to be a jack of all trades and you're still going to get that technical role, but now we're just putting a leadership on top of that as well. So does that kind of answer the question there?
Absolutely. And I've seen too that I think is really cool where some organizations they see where, to your point, I think this happens a lot, that technical people get to a certain spot in their career. They really enjoy being technical, but they feel like they've hit their ceiling. Yeah. And if they want to progress, if they want to try to make more money, they feel like they need to go manage people. But what I've seen some organizations shift to is that they create like these different tracks for leadership to where you can be a leader of people, or you could be a leader of technology, and you're really seen as equals. It's just, like we've seen is people have different strengths, and some people's strengths are staying behind the keyboard and wanting to develop themselves technically. You want to give them the same chance that you're giving other people who want to lead people. And I love to see that.
Yeah. And I think the biggest problem is that not organizations operate that way. Right. Organizations, will just try to push someone into a role that they're not, they're not, I don't want to say they're not capable of, because I think everyone's capable of doing something if they put their mind to it, but that they're not comfortable with. And they really just don't give them another option. And they feel, these people feel trapped in that role. And that's when they end up jumping ship and trying to go just back to what they're comfortable with. So it takes a lot of soul searching, I think, to figure out what you want your career trajectory to look like. And it was a weird opportunity for me, once I hit that director level role, that was like an end goal. Like, okay, that's my 20-year goal. I'm going to be like in this big, high level, job. And I hit it within 3 years into the career field. I did a rapid progression, and I had to take a step back and like, okay, I cannot have a career goal anymore. Where am I going to go from this? And it took me a lot of inner searching to like be okay with this. And I'm not saying that I'm settling for this job. I know this is not my forever position. And I'm still working on what my next goals are and how I'm going to develop within that job. You know what I mean? So, it's an interesting journey. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about development a little bit more. So we've kind of talked about that entry level, like how to get in. What are some paths in? So let's say you've got long-term goals, like you mentioned, being, high level leadership at some point in your career, or if somebody gets in and they're help desk today, but they want to look at being a cloud engineer in the future. Like, what is some advice that you have for people that, hey, okay, I landed this role. I'm fine spending some time kind of figuring out this entry level stuff, but I have this goal to get in as a cloud engineer or network engineer. What's some advice that you would give that person?
When I kind of started out in the tech field, and I still kind of do this, is, I have my end goal. Like, a lot of people will, like, if they have something they really want to set a personal goal for, I've heard of people like putting a poster up on the wall of, like, that Hawaiian vacation or something that like visually reminds you always. And I don't have something physically, but mentally, I'm always envisioning that end goal. And I draw a line from where I'm at now to where I want to be. And I'll write out, okay, I'm going to need to do at least 2 years here. And then the next logical progression, and I'll give myself some options, So if you're at the help desk and you want to become like a senior, network admin, you draw that line. Okay. So from the help desk, my next logical role would be like a network technician or a network engineer position. And to be able to get that next stepping stone job, these are the requirements. I need to go start studying for this certification. I need to learn these skills. And so while I'm at that job that, I'm kind of comfortable in for the next 2 years, I'm making myself a list of things I need to do. So when that 2 years hits, okay, I am now ready. I can start looking for that next job. And I'm finding myself adjusting that, when you land that next job, it's never quite what you planned it to be, or rarely is quite what you wanted it to be. So you kind of have to either, if you're dead set on your end goal, you have to kind of steer yourself back onto track, or maybe you decide you get that 2 years into the job field and like, I don't know if I really want to become a network admin. I'm actually really liking cloud technology. I'm going to start diving into Azure some more and start dealing with networking in Azure or something like that. So that's kind of how I've always approached it. And I just kind of break it into bite-sized pieces that make it a lot more manageable. And it feels good when you start checking off some of those goals as you start progressing. I'm kind of curious how you handle that. You've been in the field for a lot longer and, had a lot different career progressions. How have you managed that situation?
So it's interesting. I don't know that I've always handled it well or really ever handled it well. And right. I wanted to bring up that you said that I think is really solid advice of and I'm paraphrasing, but be deliberate, but flexible. And I think that's somewhere where I struggled is that I would just have like these high level aspirations of, I want to get into IT, I want to get into networking, and I want to do well. But that's all I really ever put on it. And I think the issue with that is that if you don't have defined goals or you don't have metrics to see how you're doing along the way, then you never really know when you get to where you're getting and when to set the next goal. And I think that kind of allows you to be stagnant, which, if you're somebody with a growth mindset and you want to continue to further your career, then I think it's important to take that advice that you gave and to set goals. Now, that being said, if you're in a role that you really like and you're excelling, there is nothing wrong with that. I've known people that have been career help desk or career desktop support people, and they absolutely love it. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
But if you are somebody that has goals of changing and doing something different, I do think it is now important to be deliberate, like you said, but be real with yourself. If you set that goal of, hey, 2 years from now, I want to be a network engineer. And the reason I'm saying 2 years is because I have these 5 things that I think I need to do. You mentioned finding your requirements. And I love that because when we're looking at to kind of compare it to technology, when we're looking at a new project or a new technology in an organization, one of the first things we as practitioners have to do is figure out what the requirements are. So we know what we're doing is going to be able to support the end goal. So I think it's important to set those for your career. What are my requirements to get to where I need to go? And the part about being flexible is that if you get part of the way in there, I think it's important, like you said, to have those internal checks as you go, because you may hit a point and say, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. I actually found this other thing that aligns more with my goals right now. I think you do need to allow yourself to be able to pivot. So be deliberate, but be flexible. I love that advice.
I 100% agree. If you get into a role that you're absolutely love and you're comfortable with that, there is no reason to job hop. But that does bring up a common dilemma. A lot of people getting into the tech field, they want to make big bucks. Let's just be honest. Some people are in it for the money and they want to dash for, like, they want to be making over $100,000 a year right away. And the common understanding in the tech field is the only way to make a lot of money fast is to job hop. And that typically, if you stay at the same employer for a long amount of time, you really don't get large raises. And that kind of turns up some inner turmoil for some people because they get into a job they really like, but they're not really making the dollars that they want. And do you have any advice on those situations? Like when you're trying to figure out, hey, do I stay or do I go? I'd like to make more money, but I really love this job. How do you deal with kind of those inner turmoils like that?
Well, being somebody who stayed at one company for over 13 years, I don't know if I'm the best person to ask. But one thing I'll say is I'll go back to be real with yourself and set your goals, set your requirements. So I just said that I was with that one company for 13 years, but I wasn't doing the same thing. I did desktop support, and then I got into junior network admin and worked my way to network architect. So I do think it's important to understand, and I'm a big fan of pro-con lists, of really getting things on paper or digital paper, whatever you want to call it. If I decide, hey, what's going to happen if I decide to move to another role, and build your pro-con list, add weights to it if you need to, because you could have 10 pros, only one con, but that con is worth a bunch. So you just need to, I do think you need to be real with yourself. The job jumping thing, I mean, it is real. And I'm not saying what's good and what's bad, because you could have two people that come into a job interview, and somebody that has been at, hasn't been in one role for more than a year or two. And then you've got somebody that has been in a role for 15 years or with a single company for 15 years. I think you have questions for both of those people, the person that's moved around a lot, what were your intentions in moving around? If it was a growth thing, that's one thing, because I think if you have somebody like that you're bringing into an organization, that if they're good and you want to keep them around, then you may have to treat them in a way that is, you're going to have to give them challenges constantly and new things to do and ways to incentivize them to stay. And then the person that's been with one organization for 15 years, you're going to want to find out why. Is it just a loyalty thing, or they found something good and they were comfortable and they never wanted to do anything outside of their comfort zone? To me, there are concerns with both types of people. So I don't think it's absolutely. I think early on in my career, I was definitely of the mindset of, obviously being at one place for so long, I thought the job hop thing, and when you saw people move roles or move companies every 1 to 2 years, I thought that must be terrible. Why do people do that? If you go into the next, you need to get a job, and you go into the next interview, if somebody sees that you've been at 100 places, that's not a good look, right? Well, that's not necessarily the case.
No, I agree 100%. That's a really tough inner turmoil that I think everyone has to just, again, it goes back to, what is your long-term goals? Do you have a time frame that you want to hit those long-term goals? And at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you, your family, and you have to be okay with those decisions you make. And this is really getting deep in here, but no, I think it's an important thing that I don't think a lot of people think of when they're getting in the field. on how they're going to achieve that end goal. They just know they want it, but how are they going to actually achieve it? So I 100% agree.
It's all about being deliberate. And I mean, let's be honest, what percentage of our lives professionally do we spend working? I mean, it's such a big chunk of your life. You might as well take that extra time to kind of step back and say, okay, do I enjoy what I'm doing? Do I want to do something else? Do I want to challenge myself differently? I think it just makes sense and to do as a service to yourself to do that. Now, if you go through those internal checks and say, you know what, this company's great. I love this role. I'm making an impact. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Yep, I'm going to stay with what I'm doing. Perfectly fine. Yeah. Do your thing.
I 100% agree. And before we kind of dive into the next topic, I want to talk about the one thing you didn't mention when you introduced yourself. You're the co-host of a podcast series, and I absolutely love your guys' podcast. So do you want to talk a little bit about the podcast you have and what you guys do over there?
You may or may not have been on it once.
I may or may not have. No, it's an awesome, it's just, yeah, go ahead and take it away from here.
No, I appreciate you bringing it up. So you're talking about the Art of Network Engineering podcast. It started, I was not one of the original co-hosts, so I didn't have to live through all of the really hard work they had to do. So thank you guys for bringing me on later. But it was a podcast that started in the summer. I'll say it was the first summer of COVID. Podcasts were really big, and there were 4 team members. And how it really started was they found each other online, and they were wanting to, I think they were all studying for the CCNP at the time. And so it started as a study group. And as they were meeting up to study for the CCNP, they said, you know what, this would be pretty cool if we, just kind of recorded our conversation as we are studying. So that's what they did. That's how it started. I joined, I think, in 2021 sometime, and have been on it ever since. Now, what I will say has been the best for me being on the show is public speaking. It's forced me to practice thinking on my feet, because we have high level ideas of what we're going to talk about. We may have a short amount or small amount of bullet point lists of what we're going to cover, but a lot of it is off the cuff, especially when we have guests. We like to do similar to your format, where we treat it like a conversation. We really would like our show to be like, if you just stumbled upon 4 or 5 friends hanging out at the bar or at a restaurant or whatever, just basically recording the conversation is what we wanted it to be as a goal. And I'll be honest, I'm a bit of an awkward dude. I have not always been the best at forming sentences on the fly, being able to not stutter and stammer, and being a part of this podcast has gotten me out of the comfort zone. It's gotten me to think better on the fly, form thoughts and questions quickly, which to me in turn has helped me in my career as well. Because when you're in, we're in IT, we're in meetings constantly, and just having that kind of executive presence and being able to relate to people and just have confidence, I think, is a big part of our careers. And I really attribute the podcast to really letting me practice that and helping me form that. So yes, it's a thing on the side. It's not a moneymaker by any means, but to me, I see it as a professional investment. I'm investing my time that I'm getting out of it what I put into it. And there's probably a better term for it, but I just go back to like public speaking and being able to do that stuff kind of on the fly.
That's very much how I, look at this channel and stuff. Is I'm investing in, my I don't want to call it my net worth because it's not about the money, but my career worth. For me, it's just like certifications. It's kind of that layer of security where I'm getting out in the community. And one huge important thing in any tech field is networking, not in the sense of ones and zeros, but networking with people. Because this is one thing I hate about this field. And it's never going to go away, I think, but so often it's not what you know, it's who you know. And it's gotten better through the years, but it still very much can be that way at some positions. And for me, this is a way to just get my presence out there, working on my digital brand. I'm trying to help a few people along the way. And, I really think it's awesome. Some of the topics you guys have and some of the guests, I mean, especially the ones that, have a nice big beard and stuff like that. No, I'm just kidding.
There are a lot of, I will give it to you. There are a lot of beards, a lot of beards.
Before I actually move off this topic, what do you feel like the importance of having some sort of outlet in the tech field? Like when you are being very career minded, having like, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a YouTube channel or a podcast, but just this purpose of like having a blog or something. How do you think that factors into career development? Is that something people should be considering if they're like really career minded?
Yeah, I think it is. Obviously, there are no hard and fast rules to career development in IT, but it is a way to help progress your career. I've always tried to look at things whenever I'm going to spend time on something on how can I get the most benefit for how I'm going to spend my time. And I'll be honest, I look for ways that I can get a win-win where I can help others, but also help myself. So the blog was one way to do that. I treated the blog as a way that I could practice writing because I really wanted to practice that. And then hopefully somebody will see something that I do and it be useful for them, but also as a way to teach yourself. Yeah. Earlier on in my career, I would always shy away from trying to teach someone something or mentor somebody because I always thought that, well, if I'm going to teach somebody something, I feel like I need to be an expert in it. And I've never felt like I've been an expert in anything. Well, that's not really the case. In fact, I've found that teaching people different topics, different things is a great way for you yourself to learn. So if you can teach a topic, I'll go back to, I don't know why I keep talking about spanning tree, man, but I keep talking about spanning. If you technical topic XYZ, if you are trying to get a good feel for that or get a good understanding for that, a great way to do it is to teach somebody else. Now, if you want to start small, there's nothing wrong with looking in the mirror and just trying to, if you can go through the process of teaching yourself something and then teaching others something, it's going to do nothing but solidify those topics for you. So I think that social media, blogs, videos, even short form videos now that is such a huge thing, is a great way for you to build new skill sets, but also solidify things that you're trying to learn. And something else I wanted to touch on the social media thing is you mentioned your personal brand. And when I first heard that, I'm like, what is that? This isn't,
it sounds like
I'm not a marketing, I'm not a marketing company. But it really is. And I've heard that from leaders in my professional career, is that your career is, you are your own business. Even if you're working for a company, you have a brand. And at the end of the day, you are essentially selling your services for money, whether you're running your own business or whether you're working for somebody else. That's what you're doing. And you have a brand and a way to get out into the world, who you are and what you're all about and what you're learning and how you're contributing to community. Because you brought up community as well before, that's a great social media and blogs, YouTube videos. That's a great way to show that. And something else that I think is really cool is that when you're applying for jobs, I think it's such a cool feeling to be able to, in your biography section or however you lay out your resume, if you can put your own website in there to your blog or your YouTube channel or your podcast, that's a pretty cool feeling. And for people to be able to find you that way. Kevin on our show mentioned that recently, that I think it was when he got his last role, it was never brought up in the interviews or anything like that. And then like his first week there, people started coming up to him and saying, "Hey, I've been watching your TikToks. That's pretty cool. The stuff you're putting out there." It's just like, it's a really cool feeling to be seen, and especially having people get value from the content you're putting out there. And I'll just say that you never know, because there's been times where I've been like, why would I post that blog? Nobody's going to get any value from that, or, whatever. But we have had times on the podcast too, where people would come to us, we'd get LinkedIn messages, and people would say, "Hey, that really resonated with me. I was struggling with this, that, and the other thing. And you guys said some things or gave some advice. It was really helpful."
Yeah.
We never thought that was going to be a thing. And you just never know what you may have in your head that somebody could benefit from. And having those outlets like blogs and YouTube channels is a great way to share the wealth.
I'll speak from the perspective of a hiring manager. When I see an application that has either a LinkedIn profile or even more so like a personal website, I can tell it's like a blog, I instantly stop looking at their resume and I instantly go to their online presence.
Yep.
Because when you're hiring someone, you're looking at thousands of resumes and they all start looking the same after some point. And a website or even just a well put together LinkedIn profile, when you could look at that, you're really going to get more of a sense of what the person's like, what their personality is, whether they are actually knowledgeable about the things they're putting on their resume. You get a better understanding. And almost always I end up bringing the person in for an interview because there's a moment of intrigue when I'm looking at their own website they've developed. I've had people link their GitHub repositories and I'm like, man, this person's like so cool.
That's a cool one too.
I'll get a resume and the resume will actually look like, so. If I was just looking at the resume, I may have not even considered bringing them in for an interview, but then they would link to like a GitHub or some other website. I'm like, oh, wow, this person actually is really knowledgeable. I would have never thought that. I'm definitely bringing this person in for an interview. So it's another tool to put in your tool belt there, I feel.
Absolutely.
But, originally, when I brought up your podcast, I was wanting to lead into, we talked about learning and this kind of, and all this. And really in the tech field, you have to constantly be learning. You have to constantly be honing your skills and gathering information. And I feel sometimes the further you get into your career, that can kind of become difficult, to a sense. You start learning where to get information, but finding good, valuable resources can be difficult through all the noise on the internet. Everyone has a podcast, and some of them aren't the greatest. Let's be honest. So when you find a gem like Art of Network Engineering, or I'm totally spacing on your guys' other one, Cables to Clouds.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Like you just kind of devour that up. I know I'm constantly, whenever you guys release a new episode, I'm listening to it in the car. And a lot of times I'll re-listen to it just to absorb more information. As a podcaster, and someone that's been in the field for a long time, where do you find your information? Like, how do you constantly keep up to date with the ever evolving trends in the tech field?
My opinion, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
In fact, I just talked to recently the guys at Cables to Clouds about this, because my big thing is that I try to at least stay on top of on a daily basis or close to a daily basis is RSS feeds. I find that is a good way to just quickly populate news stories. And what I do is I quickly scan them. And if I see something that I think's interesting that I want to make sure I follow up on, I'll favorite it and I'll probably come back to it later. But what I found was I wasn't catching a lot of things a lot of news that was cloud related. So I think that you do need to be a bit diverse, or I've had to be a bit diverse in how I've looked for news and to try to keep up on industry trends and that kind of thing, because the Cables to Clouds team releases every other week. They do a news show, and that has been perfect for me to try to stay up on cloud news, because podcasts, I can have that going, like you said, when you're driving or when you're cleaning around the house. You don't have to, sit at a computer screen and really focus on that. So I think podcasts are great if you can find the right ones. But I think it really just goes back to knowing what it is you're trying to find, or knowing what it is you're trying to get out of a certain media. And I think you'll know, going to different podcasts, I think you'll know pretty quick if something's going to be a good fit for you to spend your time on or not.
Absolutely. And you're talking about, keeping up with the industry trends and stuff. I'm curious. So what are like some of the new industry trends back in the networking world that like you're the most excited about? Is there any like certain emerging technologies that you're super pumped to see come to fruition?
Oh, how cliche is it going to be if I say AI?
No, I use AI daily, in all honesty. I think it's an important thing. A lot of people are worried about AI taking our jobs, but I view AI as a tool. It's just another tool in my tool belt. And it's really made it like I've used it to leverage, and advance my skills, things that I know I'm not good about, going back to my job and some of the administrative aspects of it. I've used it to help me, compose my thoughts better and give me a starting point, because I am kind of socially awkward still. You wouldn't think it talking on the camera all the time, but I have trouble starting some of these emails or, these projects. And so I'll lean and leverage AI and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I've done the same. I've used AI tools for coming up with ideas for podcast or ways to approach certain things. The main reason why I brought up AI is I'm really excited to see advancements, being in network operations for a long period of time. What comes up all the time? People don't usually call to tell you how awesome you are. People call when shit's broke.
Yeah.
And so what I'm really excited is to see what advancements or what continued advancements we're going to see with AI, machine learning, to take troubleshooting to be less of a reactive tactic and more of a proactive tactic. How do we leverage automation and AI to make our lives better, and not just our lives, but make our customers, our end users' lives better, to where problems can be seen in either troubleshooting started or even resolved before somebody's even able to pick up the phone or put in a ticket. That's where I'm really excited to see some of the AI developments is proactive troubleshooting, really network operations. How do we make those things better? I think AI could be a really big play for that. And another thing too is that people need to understand, like the use cases you just gave. People need to understand the best ways to leverage AI. Don't see it as a threat. Now, it is going to most likely threaten certain things from a job standpoint, but
yep.
Look at how you can leverage it to make your life better, like you just mentioned. And in fact, it's already generating different types of jobs. I just read a book called How AI Works, and it's a really high level, just what I needed, a really high level understanding of what AI is. Because there were a couple chapters where it got deep in the weeds. I'm like, all right, you lost me. But one of the things that was that really resonated with me is that you really have to understand how to work with those tools, how to write your prompts in a way. The author gave an example of how he was working with one of those tools and gave it a prompt, asked a question, and it just gave a completely blatantly wrong answer.
Yeah.
But he just had to tweak how he asked the question. And it was essentially, in human speak, it was a very similar question. But how he asked it the second time, he got a very concise answer. So this whole idea of prompt engineering and learning how to write AI prompts is a whole thing now. So I mean, it's generating all different kinds of buzz and ways people can interact with it. So it's huge.
It is definitely the future, and it is definitely going to disrupt every industry it touches, including network engineering. But again, the people that are going to be successful are the people that leverage it as a tool, and the people that jobs are going to get replaced are the people that aren't willing to adapt and learn, I feel. So, I know a lot of people are going to be mad at me for saying that, but I feel it's the truth. And, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all this wonderful knowledge. If people want to connect with you, if they want to listen to the podcast you have, where can they find you?
Absolutely. So podcast, artofnetworkengineering.com, on most of the socials at artofneteng. You can find me, Tim Bertino, on LinkedIn. I'm also at Tim Bertino on Twitter, X-ish.
It's Twitter.
Twitter, thank you. Yeah, they always joke about that on Cables to Clouds too, is Alex always calls it X, and Tim and Chris are always quick to jump on them and say, no, it's Twitter. But yeah, I'm trying the short form thing a little more. I know you've been big on YouTube for a long time. How much of short form are you getting into? Or are you still mainly long form?
I'm still mainly long form. I dabble in short form, and I haven't
that's
really
where
had
I'm
any
at
success.
too right now.
Yeah, I haven't had success with short form. I'm mainly focused on long form.
It's back to knowing your why and knowing what works for you. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm out there. You can find me.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for taking the time to share so much great knowledge and information. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until next time, keep learning.